Okay, so I got this meeting is being recorded by the host or a participant. So then I'm just gonna say got it.
And I've got the live captioning on. And it's 5:59, so we could let people in and then start on time. What do you think?
Okay, yeah, sure. So I'll let Will in.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Should have some music
Oh, exciting.
to bring us into the mood of Health and Safety Committee. I am going to start on time because we already started the recording, and I'm just going to start talking, and then I'm hoping that other people will join us as we go along. Hey, everybody. This is the Jones Health and Safety Committee meeting for February 15th, 2022. And we are very glad to see you here. I expect a couple more people to join us, but I did want to start on time. I hope that's okay. We do have a meeting agenda, and we're going to start by calling this meeting to order with a roll call for the permanent members who are of this committee. And I know we just started the call. It's 6:01. We will hopefully see others join us, but in the meantime, we could take a roll call. So Andrade, Serna Prado, Willagen,
Here.
Mana Hoppenworth here, Plunkett, Zen. So we have two of us here so far. We are going to continue with the agenda. We won't be able to vote on anything today, but we will take notes, and we'll just keep going. If we do, oh, here we go. I see that Daniel is going to join us, and Mr. Mitchell. So we'll keep going. If we do find ourselves in quorum, we'll be able to vote on the agenda and other things, such as talking about a co-chair for this committee. We are really grateful for Rachel's work and everyone else who has helped to stand up this committee, but she is stepping back because she is a student as well as you are. But she is stepping back to make room for other people. And we understand that she did a lot. And also we understand that she needs a couple people to fill her shoes. And so when we find ourselves that we have enough people to vote, we'll bring it up again. But I do appreciate the help of so many people who have already helped me out to transition into my role as the chair of this committee. So we'll keep going. This meeting is being recorded, and we're going to have minutes. Thank you, Ms. Willagen, for doing that. We do have a December recording for your reference if you wanted to watch that. And I could put that into the chat if you let me know you need that. But it is also available on the Jones website. We do have meeting norms that we adopted at the LSC, including monitoring your airtime, using I statements, practicing oops, ouch. If, for instance, I spoke out of line and somebody said, oops, you did this, such as misgendered somebody or spoke on top of somebody or hurt or harmed somebody in any way, I invite people to say, oops, and I, at that point, am supposed to acknowledge what happened and then see how we could resolve that harm. But we are going to assume positive intention and with our shared goals, and we are going to be solution oriented. And I love this slide that Rachel put together, and maybe at this time, I'm going to pass it to Rachel to explain what it is.
Yeah, I can definitely explain this silly slide, which some parents actually did not love. They wanted to be the laughing emoji. So yeah, just if you haven't used this React button before, it's on the bottom part of your Zoom screen, and you can let us know who you are in the Jones School community. So if you're a student, a little clapping. If you're admin, thumbs up, teacher, heart, etc. So I'm going to do my little firework.
Awesome. And I'm sharing my screen, and I'm trying to figure out how I can do. Oh, here, I could do a reaction. I could do the open mouth reaction for parents. There's a clapping emoji for a student, a thumbs up for an admin, a heart for a teacher, open mouth emoji for a parent, and a celebratory cone for the community. So thank you, students and teachers and administrators and me, parent, for being here, and community. I think we're all represented. So thank you for that. I love that. We do have a special guest today. We're going to welcome Ms. Park, who's going to talk about the equity-centered trauma-informed policy review tool later on. And she cannot make it until 6:30. So we'll welcome her when she is able to join us. This is the description on the website. So the Health and Safety Committee is to identify issues and to research and make recommendations to ensure a safe, supportive, and secure school environment for Jones students. Health and Safety Committee is open to LSC members, teachers, staff, parents, guardians, and community members. And I just wanted to point out that I graduated high school in 1987, which is when Chicago, or the nation, actually decided that Chicago needed to create LSCs because Chicago was the worst in the nation, apparently, for public school systems. So we continue on, right? And one of the reasons why LSCs were created was to invite parents and community members into the process, and because they found there was just too much bureaucracy in our public school system. So I'm really grateful that Rachel was able to be actually inspired by the creation of LSCs and actually move to our city to learn more about LSCs in general, to serve on our Jones LSC. So thank you again to Rachel. I'm just going through these slides just to orient myself and to you, and to also celebrate all the things that you've done together, including, writing in the middle of that Omicron surge, a response and mitigation measures resolution letter to the city. You all worked with the equity committee and you passed a new dress code, and that took a lot of time and hours. And then with teachers and students working together, and Ms. Lalagan is going to talk about this more, distributed many, many masks during the last COVID surge. So thank you all for doing that through this committee. Just a couple of reminders: LSCs are public bodies. Subcommittees follow the rules of the LSC bylaws, Open Meetings Act, and FOIA. And so we do have quorum requirements. I would invite you all to consider at this time becoming a permanent member of this committee, because as you see today, we have not reached quorum, right? We need a couple more people to do any kind of votes. Yes, William?
I think quorum is 4 people, in which case I think you do have 4.
Oh, good. So we have me, Miss Logan, Rachel, and who else?
Daniel,
I'm here. Daniel.
Oh, Daniel. Oh, awesome. I can't see you on my screen. So, oh, perfect. Well, in that case, we're going to go back super duper quick. And let's do roll calls on a couple things, including approval of this agenda. So Andrade, approval of agenda. Somebody needs to make a motion for the approval of the agenda. I can do that. Somebody needs to second it.
I second.
And then we need to do a roll call. So Andrade,
Yes.
Lilagan,
Here.
Mana Hoppenworth, yes. Zen.
Yes.
Awesome. So we just approved the meeting agenda. And then what I would like to do is I also would like to nominate Miss Cindy Lilagan to be the co-chair of this Health and Safety Committee. So I would like to make a motion to motion for Miss Lilagan to be co-chair for this Health and Safety Committee. And I need a second.
Second.
Thanks. And then we'll take a roll call. Andrade,
Yes.
Lilagan, can you vote for yourself?
I think so.
Okay.
So
Lilagan,
yes.
Mana Hoppenworth, yes. Zen.
Definitely.
Yay. Thank you. And then the last thing that I wanted to take a vote on, which we'll come to later, is approval, discussion and approval of an anti-racist statement for this group. But just again, orienting us where we are right now. Perfect. Thank you, William, for that flag. Here are a couple of events for this committee that we're setting forward, including 3 dates to put on your calendar. So Monday, March 14th, April 18th, and May 23rd are the proposed meetings for the Health and Safety Committee. And is it, are we ready to vote on these dates for the next calendar events? I make a motion to approve these dates for the next Health and Safety Committee meetings. Do I get a second?
I second.
Okay, and then we'll go again, Andrade,
Okay.
Lilagan,
Yes.
Mana Hoppenworth, yes. Zen?
Yes.
Awesome. So we have set those dates and we'll put that into the minutes.
Could you repeat those dates for me one more time?
March 14th,
Okay.
April 18th, May 23rd.
Okay. Thank you.
And these are proposed topics that we have, including the peer conferencing program, building accessibility and reporting sexual and other misconduct training with guest speakers from Title X or ACLU. Thank you for that. So we're going to go into the idea of an anti-racist values statement. I did ask the general LSC if they had one, and they did not, and other committees do not have one either. So I would like us to consider it, including the words that we use in this space, acknowledging that we have a history of forced migration of enslaved people, land acquisition and dispossession with the Homestead Act, and inequality, including redlining in America, including Chicago. And also we want to distinguish between equality and equity. I don't know if you've seen this before, but this is artist Angus McGuire from the Interaction Institute for Social Change. And if you are watching it and you can't see it, it's a cartoon. It has 3 individuals watching a baseball game behind a fence, and they have three crates, and each of the individuals are different sized. So in the first half of the graphic, the crates are underneath each of the individual, but the gate is at the same level, but each of the individuals are different heights. And so the shortest one cannot see anything because the gate is too high. So, and that is a description of equality. And next to it on the right side, it is the three same individuals with the three same crates of resources, and they redistributed the resources so that the shortest individual gets 2 crates, the middle-sized individual gets a middle-sized crate, and then the tallest individual gets no crate, and everybody can enjoy the game. And Cynthia Silva Parker was quoted by Sustainable Cities Network in an article infusing equity into the urban planning process. She says, what is equity? In simplest terms, it means fairness, which is not necessarily the same thing as equality. Not about everybody getting the same thing. It's about everybody getting what they need in order to improve the quality of their situation. The other word I want to talk about is trauma. And the city of Chicago has a vision to become a city that is educated about trauma, prevents transmission of harm, and positively impacts the lives of others. And their approaches are embedded in prevention, aiding and supporting healing rather than contributing to ongoing experiences of trauma. So their idea is to become trauma-informed and sustaining changes. And one way they think about doing that is to use universal precautions. And in that way, they propose that you treat everyone as if they have some trauma or some adversity or stress. So I say that because Chicago Public Schools falls under the city of Chicago. And so in that way, we follow the guidelines of the city. And then this is just the same thing what I just said. There are trauma-informed principles, including understanding, safety and security, cultural humility and responsiveness, compassion and dependability, collaboration and empowerment, resilience and recovery. And then I want to thank Rachel for sharing this document from the Minnesota Historical Society, which does define white supremacy culture. And it is from Dismantling Racism, a workbook for social change groups by Kenneth Jones and Tema Oken from Changework 2001. I do want to point out that it is a little bit different from the original. So at any point, I think that it might be interesting for us to compare those two things and how Minnesota Historical Society took that original document and kind of condensed it. So at some point I would like to address that too. But there is a graphic here and it kind of puts all of white supremacy culture in one little thing. And it includes things like, individualism, right to comfort, progress is bigger. Let's see, other thinking, either thinking. So we can dig into that, but what we want to do is we propose that this group has a mission in that every single action of this health and safety committee is motivated in part towards dismantling white supremacy culture to achieve justice for all. And we do this through a racial equity-centered and trauma-informed approach. And at this, I would ask if anybody has any questions about any of those graphics that I presented before we move forward. Great. And so the proposal is I motion that we adopt the Health and Safety Committee adopt an anti-racist value statement, knowing that a statement is just the first step towards action. But we propose that every single action of this Health and Safety Committee is motivated in part towards dismantling white supremacy culture to achieve justice for all. We do this through a racial equity centered and trauma informed approach. And I need a second.
I second.
And we'll do a roll call. Andrade?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to quickly say I really appreciate this direction, and I think it was missing from the committee last year. And I appreciate you, Lenny, kind of thinking about this and putting it forward. I know, like, maybe we're kind of like tired of statements, some of us, but I still think that it's useful. I just wanted to kind of, I would like to hear what other members think, maybe. I know we're about to vote and everything, but I do want to, like, because Daniel and Cindy, sorry, Ms. Logan, both of you have been participating in the committee before, and I'm wondering what you think about this. And I also, yeah, I just would like to hear from y'all.
I can go first. I really appreciate statements like these because I know they're statements, but like just hearing it like reaffirms, that people are working towards it. Which is I really agree with it, but I think Kelly B in the comments put something that the original document said that these attitudes and behaviors, the original document from the Minnesota Historical Society, which you were talking about, Lenny, about how we should go back and read the original document, how the original document also had like that these can also come from like groups that are led by people of color or predominantly people of color. So I don't know how that would fit in with the white supremacy culture.
Actually, may I speak?
Yeah. Go
Hi, I'm a community member. So the original document said these attitudes and behaviors can show up in any group or organization, whether it is white-led or predominantly white, or people of color-led or predominantly people of color. This modified version by the Minnesota Historical Society said organizations that are people of color-led or a majority people of color can also demonstrate many damaging characteristics of white supremacy culture. So I just wanted to point out, even though they do reference at the very top of this document, the original source of this document, as you go forward doing this work, which I think is critically important, and I definitely support in every way, when you are using resources to, especially something like this from the original source, to go back and look at the source, because the reality is white supremacy culture is always at work, even to the point where the Minnesota Historical Society used whiteness to change the language in this very document.
Thanks, Kelly. Rachel?
Yeah, thank you for that comment, Kelly. It's super, super important. And I also just I was talking to my partner about this weekend. This is 20 years old or 21 years old at this point. So if you read the document, and then I think the original work that it's coming from is even older than that, so the late 90s. It's just something to keep in mind. Yeah, I appreciate that there's ways in which I also think, like, you're not going to see any policy like this, that CPS, like language like this in any CPS official policy, which I think is it's admirable of Lenny to bring it up now. And I'm happy to have more conversations about it in the future, but I think it's like notable that there's not language like this. I just wanted to add that.
Thanks, Rachel. I appreciate that. Taking the time. I know we have I have a tendency to rush through things to get it done, but also I think that reflecting on the fact that a lot of our institutions don't have an anti-racist statement, much less an anti-racist action plan. So it's a first step to just acknowledge what needs to be acknowledged, which is that at least we have this, and it's someplace, it shows our values, so that when we do get confused about what we're doing, we will at least have this statement. Anyone else have any comments? Thanks, Kelly, for your insight on that. And I'm sorry, I can't see the chat very well. So anybody feel free to just verbalize what's in the chat if I can't see it. And also it'll help to help those who are listening later see or understand what's happening if we just say what's happening in the chat.
Lenny,
Okay.
would you mind moving back to the statement? Thanks. Yeah. I was just going to say our whole staff, the teaching staff, as well as administration, we're all trying to learn more about anti-racism and how to support our students and our staff. And so just keeping it aware in all aspects of our work, I think is very important. So just to see it again, to remind ourselves of the values is super important. So thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Lulagan. I mean, I think that it's, in this moment where every single institution is mandating anti-racist trainings, including Jones, and also that there is a caucus of Black teachers that are refusing to, participate because they don't feel safe. I mean, they're not here to speak on behalf of themselves, but I do want to acknowledge that that's happening. And it's, saying the words anti-racism, white supremacy, and dismantling white supremacy is really charged for some and also confusing for others. So I would like to continue to unpack the statement throughout our time together for the rest of the year, including what does it mean to have a racial equity centered and trauma-informed approach. And I'm hoping that later when Ms. Parks comes, we can help do that with the policy tool that she's gonna present to us. Okay, anyone else? I appreciate this so much, thank you. Okay, we'll start again, Andrade. Yes, he said yes. Lulagan,
Yes.
Mana Hoppenworth, yes. Sen,
Yes.
motion passed. Thank you. All right, so we're going to pass it to Ms. Lulagan, who is going to talk about COVID updates. And this is going to be a regular segment on the remainder of our health and safety meetings this year.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. So yes, I'll just introduce myself very quickly. Ms. Lulagan. I'm a computer science physics teacher at Jones College Prep High School, and I'm also a co-chair of the computer science and engineering department. The next slide. So this was from last time. So we can just, there was only update. I was able to answer one of the questions. So COVID, I'll just read them. So we know that CPS students can sign up weekly for testing. Approximately 86% of CPS employees have submitted proof of vaccination as of October 13th. The remaining 14% of unvaccinated CPS employees can opt in to weekly testing for now. I guess CPS had relaxed the firm vaccine mandate. And the outstanding questions at the time were, what percent of students at Jones have signed up for COVID testing, which as of 2/22 is 45%, and what percent of Jones employees are vaccinated? I was not able to find that information out right away. So I'll try to get back to that question in the future. So then I think we can move on to the next slide. I put more of the more recent information here on this slide. So from the CTU website on regarding safety committees. They were able to give us some more information about students enrolled in testing, which is about 45% at Jones, as well as students vaccinated, which is about 83%. And then also from the last LSC meeting, we had the principal's report, as well as, well, let's just go over the principal's report. And and Dr. Powers gave us some more stats regarding number of students who had COVID, as well as the spike that got to about 50 or 60 right before Christmas break. And then about roughly how many students are quarantined around now, between 8 and 10, even less now over the last week or so. To date, 88%, I think we've talked about this earlier, have received one shot, while 83% are fully vaccinated. And then CPS has recently reduced the quarantine from the 10 days to 5 days, starting in February. Also, a newish thing would be the fact that staff are being asked to show booster status, and that they will need to start getting tested weekly if they don't show that by March 1st. And then also at that same LSC meeting, the students had a statement, which I guess maybe Will, if Will or Alexandra want to talk to that point. I just pulled that from the recording that I saw. So does Will or Alexandra want to talk about that for a second?
Talk about the implementation of COVID protocols.
Yeah, just that little, yes, please.
Yeah, we were talking about how we understood that it was important from LSC meetings to get students in the community involved in COVID protocols and increasing vaccination, mask wearing. But we hadn't really seen that a lot in class in school. We hadn't, the only emails we'd really receive would be right before, the I don't know what they're called, the testing days, I think. So there wasn't a lot of notice, as well as there weren't a lot of reminders for people to wear their masks for social distancing. So we felt like it was less important than it should have been, and we implored the use of more tactics to get people ready to get vaccinated, to help people desire to get vaccinated, as well as get tested.
Great, thank you for that summary. Will, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, just one other thing was one of the key points we requested was just more communication. There's a lot, in terms of sort of like the quarantine policy after you've been exposed, there's some conflicting information with CPS policy, and at the time when we wrote that, I think the CDC's policy was slightly different. And so, that's okay, it happens, because that's how society works, and that's how the CDC and all of those organizations work to keep us safe. It would just be beneficial if more of this information was communicated to students and help alleviate some of the confusion, as well as make it easier for them to do things like report vaccination status. I don't think a lot of students know that they're technically supposed to report their vaccination status. I didn't know until I had a friend who got COVID and I was exposed, and I was informed that I have to report my status. So it was great. Once I was exposed, CPS did a great job of letting me know that I need to register my status. And so I've done that. But I think there's probably some students who don't know that. And so it would be great if we could communicate the expectations like that more effectively to Jones students. I think that would really help us sort of stay ahead. Yeah.
Great, thank you. That explains a lot of what the statement that you also posted. It's very super helpful to hear what your thoughts are. Okay, and then after that, I just wanted to update you on the KN95 mask situation. So through it started with the safety committee, and then the administration approved it to purchase 4,000 some masks right before Christmas break. And then right when we came back from break, as well as right when we came back from the lockout, as well as within the last week, we had 3 distributions of approximately 1,000 masks each with the help of the National Honor Society. And that was Daniel's idea, by the way, to enlist National Honor Society students. And now we're coming to Mr. Mitchell let me know that we do have the next set of the next set of KN95 masks that can get distributed that we received from CPS. And I think the idea will be to maybe in the next week hand out approximately 5 masks per student to ACT Lab teachers. And then the idea here is, do they hand them out in a group of 5 to each student, or do they sort of help the student pace themselves by maybe having them ask the teacher, the ACT Lab teacher, for a new mask whenever they need one? And I could get some feedback from people if that's from the students or anyone, parents or anything, about whether the pacing is needed or if we can just really just hand out 5 masks at one time. And I'll ask that in a second. Let me just wrap up the summary here. So I talked about the boosters. We do have a PSA being filmed by the Spring Musical actors. And I think they're going to do that in ACT Lab this week. And then we'll try to get that out over social media and as well as ACT Lab teachers and maybe the Eco Flight as soon as possible after that it's filmed. I did want to mention the questions down there. Oh, okay. Well, let's go straight to the right there. That fantastic graph came from our safety committee as well, and that got transferred over to the other safety committee, which I think then was picked up by the front office administration, pointing out how important wearing KN95 masks are. The fact that if everyone was wearing a KN95 mask, we'd be safe up to 25 hours if we were sitting next to someone who's infectious, if we were both in KN95 masks. But I worry about that top left corner where our students are eating lunch and taking their masks off. And then that timing is much less. And this was pre-Omicron, so that's even less than the 15 minutes. And so I think the PSA is actually going to try to address, trying to be a little bit more careful at lunchtime as well. And then these questions on the bottom refer to the whole idea of why we're worried about boostering and how many students are boosted, and then also testing. The fact that with the booster, there's a part here with 2 shots. After just 2 shots of the vaccine, after 6 months, the protection against severe disease declines to 40%. And then also with the testing, why is testing so important? Well, with the new drugs that are working so well now, you need to know right away if you have COVID and start that treatment right away. So that's some of the reasons why testing and boosters are important. And I think that's it for the slide. And then if I could just get a little feedback about whether you feel like 5 masks to a student at one time would work, or if the students or the teachers would appreciate being paced a little better.
Go ahead, William.
I think the pacing idea is not necessarily a bad one, not because people necessarily need to be paced, but just because people have different needs in terms of KN95 masks. So like, I do know some people, their families have some, and so they need less. And so it might be beneficial to retain some of those masks for people who might need them more. I don't know if that's how the policy works necessarily, like if it's 5 per student period, or if we have bought 5 per student. And that might be something someone more knowledgeable can inform. I would just say like some people have more limited access to KN95 masks, and therefore it might be better to keep more of them in reserve. That way, when those students and community members who have reduced access need them, they're still available.
Anyone else?
Okay.
I tend to agree with that idea, William, to see, each time you distribute masks, to see what it is like in the whole population, just to kind of take a poll, because some might have ample amounts, exactly what you said. But also I feel like if you spread it out, it's an opportunity to announce, you know, we have these masks and keep the masks on and mask up and that kind of thing. Anybody else have any other comments? Thank you, Ms. Lilagan, for presenting that. And yeah, if you have any other questions, please send them to her. We are going to move on. We've got two more speakers tonight. One is Mr. Mitchell, who's going to talk about the Jones Whole School Safety Plan with updates, and then we're going to hear from Ms. Parks. So the Jones Whole School Safety Plan includes 4 elements, including physical safety, emotional safety, relational trust, and then an overall whole school safety. And there is a timeline which we can go over and also get an update, a really brief update from Mr. Mitchell, because I know that he's driving right now, and I told him that life is so much more important than a briefing on a document. So I do want to, let me see if I can pull up this description. So Whole School Safety Plan Monthly Report, this is from December. Back in the spring of 2021, CPS asked schools to reimagine what school safety looked like. CPS asked schools to develop a whole school safety committee, which would provide the LSC a list of recommendations. This committee was asked to look at whole school safety as a connection between emotional, physical safety, and relational trust. This reimagining of school safety brought into question the necessity and utilization of school resource officers, SROs. The desire to keep them or get rid of them was a school by school decision. Schools that opted not to keep their SROs were provided a dollar amount for that decision. Position that could be used for other programming or another type of position. After some research, some surveys, and a lot of discussion, it was determined that Jones would not retain their SROs. And this plan is what was developed, including supports that would utilize the funds that were earmarked for SROs. So firstly, I wanted to congratulate you for that, because that was a tremendous thing that this committee led on, which is removing the SROs from Jones School. Throughout the 2021-2022 school years, updates are supposed to be provided with the progress being made with the whole school safety plan. And these updates will be provided to the Health and Safety Committee meeting each month. They will in turn be shared with the LSC at the monthly meeting, and actionable items in the whole school safety plan were broken down into 4 priorities, and the updates will be shared out based on these priorities. So I will just quickly go through the 4 priorities. 1 is to make sure all students feel connected with staff and peers. 2, to make sure all students feel physically safe in school. 3, to make sure students have access to social emotional supports. And 4, to make sure that we provide mental health supports for students. So at this time, is Mr. Mitchell, are you available for any updates?
Yeah, I am. Thank you, Lenny, for setting the stage for me and just recapping the work that the whole school safety committee did. Daniel was a part of that, and Rachel was a part of that. So it was a long effort, a concerted effort, and the whole school safety plan was the fruits of our labor. So with that being said, to kind of update people, thought it would just be easiest to summarize those priorities that came from the plan. And so as it centers around, the first one is school safety, correct? Are students feeling safe? Is that correct?
Number 1 is make sure all students feel connected with staff and peers. So that means, EOS data mentions trusted adults. And for many students, this is all about relational trust. And there were, go ahead.
Yeah, so with that, we looked at our partnership with Equal Opportunity Schools, which is still kind of in the works. We had the district kind of pause on the work we were doing with EOS, and they paused because they had more schools joining EOS. So to maximize the trainings and the supports, we had to do a soft reset. So with the work with EOS, one of the things that's critical is the idea, and I'm sorry, actually this comes from the survey data, which is why taking the survey is critical, is students actually identify in the survey people who they call a trusted adult. So we wanted to be able to take that information and then apply it within the school setting. So we're kind of behind in that work because we haven't collected the data for this year because the survey is still open. So as far as an update, that is still the plan, is to use some of that data and support equal opportunity schools to create a more systemic way of building and creating identifying those trusted adults for many students. That was priority one. What's the next priority, Lenny?
Number 2 is to make sure all students feel physically safe in school.
So as it relates to physical safety, one of the things we wanted to do was, especially in light of losing both SROs, we wanted to increase our security presence. So we allotted some money out of the budget to hire a secondary security person. Back in November, we had a couple people who were interested, but for one reason or another, those things did not pan out. So we're still in search of the most appropriate candidate to fill our security position. Because we're not looking for someone that's just going to protect the building, but someone who's also going to be big on building relationships with our students, which we think is equally as important. So there's an update there. The next priority?
To make sure students have access to social emotional supports.
Yep. So with that, we did our work with Emoja, which is now called New Route. Teachers have been trained, and they've actually had some interactions with students where we tried to integrate social emotional learning curriculum through specifically our Eagle Lab. So those short Act Lab Fridays as touch points to create these lessons and start building that. But the idea was that we would have a set curriculum to operate from, rather than teachers kind of pulling from all over. So that was something structurally that we looked to implement this year, or I should say have implemented this year.
And then the last one is to make sure you provide mental health support for students.
Absolutely. So the district has a strong, I don't want to say the word initiative, but a strong push in supporting mental health. And so there have been partnerships that have been created, and we, signed up for some of that information. And I'm actually following up with a district rep this week in regards to the community partnerships we were looking into. Secondarily, we wanted to create and sustain a behavioral health team within the school. And again, working with the district, we're making sure that that component is in place as well. And the purpose of the behavioral health team is composed of case managers, social workers, counselors. It is to address the needs and concerns of students as it relates to mental health. And they are that bridge to kind of school level support and then access or being able to provide at least information for additional outside sources. So the development of a behavioral health team is also something that is very important and is in the works. So that will kind of conclude as far as updates, for right now. I'll hopefully have more detailed information for those who need it at next month's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Mitchell at this time? Any questions? All right, well, thank you, Mr. Mitchell, for joining us. I appreciate it. Please drive safely. And
I
also,
will.
okay, we look forward to that report, and we appreciate it very much. We will present that report at the next LSC meeting.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next up, we've got a couple policies that this committee had been working on, including updating the Jones Student Handbook for our trans and gender non-conforming students. The questions included, is there an existing school-specific set of guidelines for trans and GNC students? If not, can an explicit school-specific policy be written and added to the Jones Student Handbook? And as far as I know, nothing has been changed on this. Maybe Rachel, you can comment.
Yeah, I can just say that at the December meeting, I kind of proposed a draft of a paragraph. Maybe some of you remember looking at that during the last meeting. And I know it needs to be workshopped. But I think something has been posted on the website that's like a CPS policy, like for the whole district. And I guess the force of the argument is like, or just the idea, I guess, is maybe Jones can be a school that kind of models what it would look like to get a little bit more specific with the policy, so that students feel like they're supported in the specific environment that they're in every day.
Thank you. And I will add that that handbook on the Jones website is still 2019, 2020, I believe. So I think it is, it's due for an update anyway, but we'll continue to report and to ask the admin if there's anything that can be done to update that handbook. I want to move on because I see that the time is 10 to 7 and we are really going to aim to end around 7:30, if not a couple minutes after. I want to move on to talk about the about sex ed. This is the talk, which is a PDF download from ACLU. When I asked my kid who goes to Jones if she had heard about the talk, she said, "In what contexts?" And I said, regarding sex ed. So as you know, the talk can also be about the talk, what Black mothers or fathers need to talk to about regarding, if they have to deal with police officers. That is a real talk, which is not the talk that the ACLU is referring to here. I will share the link to that publication because that has to do with the bill that we're going to relate to, which is called the Keeping Youth Safe and Healthy Act. We had conversations in December in this committee about sex ed at Jones, and I wanted to bring up that Illinois passed this bill. It now includes that sex ed has to include anatomy and physiology. The old law did not. It has to discuss healthy relationships. The old bill did not. Has to explore identity, including sexual orientation, gender expression, and gender identity. It has to include sexual health education as a culturally appropriate and trauma-informed thing. It has to include STIs, including HIV, incise the effectiveness of prevention methods. It includes a full range of information and tools to prevent unintended pregnancies, and it must be inclusive of all youth. So I just wanted to touch on that before we moved on to the next thing, because I know Ms. Parks is waiting to present to us. But first, I wanted to appreciate the discussion that you had in December. I was just reviewing that meeting, and I do appreciate all of the discussion that was had, including all of the recommendations that were put forward. by the students. So thank you for that. I believe that we can continue to talk about sex ed in the health and safety committee, but also we can work on holding Jones, accountable in implementing sex ed in a way that that actually follows the law, which is basically it has to be inclusive of all these things. Does anybody have any questions about that? I know that was a very, very superficial way to introduce the Keeping Youth Safe and Healthy Act, but it is a bill that many organizations worked on, including Planned Parenthood of Illinois, ACLU, and others. And if we need to, we could bring in a speaker to dig down deep into that. Okay, if there are no other questions, I did have a question for you about Title IX. And again, I can't see the chat. So if anybody has something in there that they want to say, just let me know. And so my question to you is, are you confident in your knowledge about Title IX and why we should care in this committee? And the poll is, yes, I understand Title IX fully and why I should care. The second option is, no, I don't know much about Title IX. And the third option is, I don't understand this question. So 4 out of 6 of us participated so far. I know some of us are on the phone, so might not be able to participate. So we have 83% participation, and we are going to end the poll. And 40% of us said, yes, I understand Title IX fully and why I should care. And 60% said, no, I don't know much about Title IX. And no one said, I don't understand this question. Okay, so thank you for taking that poll. It informs us to figure out what we want to talk about in the future meetings for this committee. And I believe that we have enough people interested in Title IX that we should bring in a speaker. I want to point out that the Chicago Public Schools does have an equal opportunity compliance office, and their mission is to provide an equitable, inclusive, safe, supportive, and secure learning and working environment in every school and neighborhood in a district that is free from discrimination, harassment, sexual misconduct, and retaliation, ensuring that all students, faculty, staff, vendors, and visitors can thrive. And they do investigate discrimination, which is treating an individual less favorably because of their actual or perceived membership in one or more of the protected categories. And if you look up protected categories, you'll be able to see the discrimination policies that's set forth by federal laws. This is the Office of Student Protections in Title IX. So there is a whole office that does deal with sexual harassment, but also Title IX. So it's kind of all together. And so they are available. We just had training. I'm sharing this with you because we just, at the LSC, we just had training on who is supposed to report violations of discrimination, of Title IX. And truly, it was a little bit eye-opening to me because I understand now that I am supposed to report those kinds of violations, as is community members, visitors, vendors, teacher, staff, students. And that's something that I would like to learn more about, and we can bring that forward in this committee in a future meeting. But also here, I'm sharing this tile again, because if you don't see it, if you can't see it, or if you're on the phone, it does have a phone number. If you have any questions about Title IX, the number is 773-535-4400. And the email is osp@cps.edu. And they have a Title IX coordinator that can answer many of your questions there. Okay, so I'm going to pass it to, oh yes, Daniel.
Yeah, before we move on, I just want to say I really like the idea of bringing in someone outside to speak on Title IX, just because I know CPS has their like internal like videos, which I don't feel are the best. Honestly, I think last year we had to watch one, and I don't remember a lot of it. So I like the idea of bringing someone in, but if we do, I feel like we should like really broadcast that meeting, so a lot of like other students or parents, because parents I don't think get to watch the video, or they don't have to watch the video, so just like broadcasting that would be a really cool idea.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. I mean, do you envision that this meeting in May could be solely about Title IX? Do you feel like that's okay to fill the meeting with that? Because I think that if we bring in a speaker, they could present a general idea of what Title IX is, and then kind of talk about maybe different scenarios. Would that be interesting to people? And then the third part of the meeting could be just questions and answers.
Actually, I think that'd be really cool. I think that can fill a whole meeting, just because I think a lot of the work that we do here has been centered around like gender discrimination. So I think that'd be yeah, I can totally fill a meeting. Sorry.
Okay. Sounds good. Does anybody else have any other comments or questions or ideas about what that May meeting? I'm thinking that May would be okay for that. Then it'll give us time to kind of bring awareness that we're going to bring in a speaker and to find some speakers. If no one else has any other questions, we'll continue to work on that. I'm going to flag that is 7 o'clock, and we have a lot of time to discuss more, but I do wanted to pass the mic on to Ms. Park, who is going to present on the equity-centered trauma-informed policy review tool, which was brought up at the last LSC meeting, which I found really fascinating, but I'm not sure how to use the tool. And if you can't see the tile, it says at the top, from Equity-Centered Trauma-Informed Education by Alex Shervin Bennett from 2021, policy review tool generating questions to critically analyze policy. Use the reflection questions on the left-hand column to guide your analysis of school policy. If there are reflection questions should help you generate additional specific questions and concerns about each policy. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because I believe that if we have an anti-racist statement in this committee, along with tools that we could use to really look at policies which affect so many of us, that this committee can move, I believe, can move a lot of mountains, especially if we're involving many different levels in this committee, including students and parents and committee members and administrators and staff, because I feel like it's not the burden of just one person to fix discrimination or sexual harassment or to champion these things. It is upon all of us, and we can do this together by passing good policies through a very critical eye and actually implementing them in a way that is equitable and makes sense. So at this time, I would love for Ms. Park to come on and to introduce herself and tell us about this tool.
Hi, everyone. Yes, so I'm Heidi Park. I am in the science department at Jones. And I read this book, Equity-Centered Trauma-Informed Education, last summer, and it has a lot of good things in it. And at the last LSC meeting, when it was brought up that the LSC and different committees could implement like an anti-racist statement into your committee areas, I thought of this tool in terms of just thinking about how we reflect on and analyze the policies that we currently have and how they affect all the members of our community. I found this framework really helpful because one of the things that Alex Bennett says is that trauma is a lens, not a label. And it's a lens for looking at how things are happening, not like you have trauma and you don't, or like you have this much trauma and you don't have this much. It's not like a quantifying thing. And also, I think I really appreciated this book because it talks about how schools can be places that inflict harm and trauma on our students, even as much as we as educators often want to believe that we are the safe haven for students who may be dealing with trauma and traumatic experiences. And so the questions in this policy review tool, I think, are aimed at getting behind what's the reasoning behind different policies and what cultural values or norms are expressed in the policies. And so kind of unpacking some of those unspoken things that get involved and that, especially if you're in a privileged or dominant group, you don't necessarily think about. And you know, it says like policy documents or statements of our values as educators, and the ones that we put in writing are an articulation of how we want our schools to operate. And so I think I was looking at this as like, I haven't used this with other people yet, I'll be really honest. And so it's more of just like my personal reflections as I've been thinking about my classroom and things like that this year. But I think it could be a useful way to look at what is existing in our school in terms of different, at different levels. Like as a teacher, I look at what happens inside my individual classroom. As an LSC committee, you are looking more broadly at what is happening kind of across the school and kind of thinking about what are the things that are holding up these policies, and is that really what we want to be doing as a school? Does that reflect our values? There's a lot of good stuff in this book, and she also talks about priorities of trauma-informed and equity-centered education are predictability, flexibility, connection, and empowerment. Empowerment for both students and teachers in terms of how we do things. And so as we think about policies and how we want to change them, trying to build in some of those pieces as well. But yeah, I was sharing this as a resource for different LSC committee chairs to look at and consider. I hope that it's helpful and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Park? Maybe can you go over one or two reflection questions and kind of talk about the examples there and how maybe they could relate to something that's happening at Jones right now? Anything that come to mind?
So I think one of the questions here is, does this policy unfairly hold students accountable for factors outside of their control, e.g. access to money, resources, time outside of school? And I honestly don't know where we landed as a school with the tardy policy, but those kinds of policies are what come to mind when I think about that. Is like, are we holding students accountable for tardies when they may not have any control over that, you know, and those kinds of things. And I'm not sure that right now we have a super consistent school-wide policy. And so that's the flexibility aspect of it. But then I think we're missing some of the predictability aspect of being more trauma-informed and equity-centered. And so it's like that balance, that kind of tug of war for those two different priorities in terms of how we think about our different policies. I would say in terms of like one of the questions is, as we currently enforce it, does this policy impact groups of students differently? I think it was this committee that talked about the dress code, or was that the equity committee? I don't really remember.
Yeah, it was championed by the equity committee, and then the health and safety committee came on. I
Yeah,
believe.
so some of these questions could have been used to reflect on our dress code and what was or wasn't in there, who was or wasn't being who was or wasn't being represented. And even earlier, as you were talking about putting in a statement about trans and gender nonconforming students into our handbook, it's like I think we can use some of these questions to think about what are we and aren't we saying in the statement as you craft it. So.
I think about also what we don't have in place,
Mhm.
you know, and how, I don't know, how can you use this tool to actually generate a policy versus critiquing one that already exists?
So I do think this is more for critiquing ones that already exist. There's more in this book. So there's a whole chapter on proactive priorities for decision making, and that's where she gets into those priorities of predictability, flexibility, empowerment, and connection, and how we can put into place different things that allow for all 4 of those priorities to be in place, and thinking about how those things affect how students, how children, teenagers are impacted by trauma and how that affects learning. Because, if you're in a very chaotic environment, you need a lot of predictability, but you also need flexibility to be able to account for all those different things, right? So, yeah, there's another table on reflecting on those proactive priorities and kind of thinking about what are the strengths and what are the challenges in those different areas as you think about it. But yeah, I just really recommend this book. I
Yeah,
think
go ahead,
Rachel,
Rachel.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you, Lenny. I just wanted to, say thank you to Ms. Park for sharing this. And I'm really like focusing in on this line at the top that says these concerns can then be addressed by a group representing the different roles in your school community, because I'm thinking, I'm just wondering if there's a way to get students involved in discussions about policies. Because I can totally see, a roundtable of administrators and teachers and staff members kind of going through these reflection questions together, but that would also leave out a key player. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just wondering. This is a question that I have about a lot of things involving students, where like a meeting space is not traditionally inclusive of students. How do you then kind of introduce them into that space? Because sometimes students are like, well, no one's ever taught me how to participate in a meeting like this one, or my voice doesn't, I'm not supposed to decide the rules, but it's clear that these policies are affecting them. So this is just kind of a question, not just for you, Ms. Park, but kind of for just everyone, I guess. And something that I think about a lot is like how to bring students into the conversation. I would also like to hear from William, if you want to share how to bring students into the conversation in a way that they feel comfortable, and also like, retain their autonomy.
Yeah, William and then Miss Logan.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and thank you so much, Rachel, for bringing that up. It is really important that students are represented in these discussions, and something I think Rachel pointed out is how do we make students feel comfortable in these discussions and make sure that they are participating? Because one of the things besides, like, how do I participate in this kind of discussion that students might be concerned with is, contradicting administrators and contradicting teachers and people who are in positions of authority, which is something that we are trying to make them feel comfortable doing in this scenario. So I don't have the perfect answer to that. I wish I did. I think when we do sort of approach this topic, we should perhaps encourage students to talk amongst themselves before talking with teachers and administrators, and give them sort of a chance to get comfortable having these conversations. I say they, like I'm not a student. Sorry, that was really weird. Give us a chance to get comfortable having these conversations with one another before we start having these conversations as a larger school community. But yeah, I think that I'm really optimistic as to what we collectively can come up with to solve these problems.
Yeah, Ms. Lulagan.
So this might be a nice segue into what we might be having, who might be coming to talk next month. We do have the restorative justice team coming to talk to us. And we've had students being trained in talking circles and peace circles. So it might be just like what Will said, like a way for students to talk amongst themselves first about some of these policies, as well as how to incorporate their voices into these types of meetings as well. We can sort of brainstorm with the RJ team.
Thanks, Ms. Lulagan. I'm very interested in the RJ team and what you all are up to. Mr. Mitchell?
Sorry, was having a hard time unmuting. All great ideas. We may also consider our student voice committee. That is a district-wide space for students to be developed to have a seat at the table. If you, I forget where it's located on the district website, but the student voice committee has layers, and its whole inception was to increase the student voice as it relates to development, creation, implementations of policies district-wide. And so we do have a student voice committee at school, and over the last couple of years have been really trying to kind of figure out its voice and purpose in the school. So there might also be another entity to create a space at the table, because that whole, again, the whole purpose of the committee is to have a seat to speak with administration, to feel comfortable, to be able to face some pushback and feel safe in being able to do that. So that committee is also available as well.
Thanks, Mr. Mitchell. Ms. Park?
Yeah, I really appreciate this question, because I think one thing that Rachel said was that students often don't feel like they are invited to these spaces, but even when they are, they don't know quite how to participate. And I think that is true of a lot of people when they come into different meeting spaces. And I'm sure that the restorative justice program has protocols and things. And I have found, even as an adult, like having a clear protocol and knowing like, okay, this is my time to talk to people. This is my time to think by myself. These are the specific questions that I'm reflecting on, rather than just like, what do you think of this policy? Let us know your thoughts, and so I think, especially if you are really wanting to hear some of those more marginalized voices of people who may not feel comfortable, even if they've been invited, to actually speak up in the middle of a meeting or whatever the case may be, or as William mentioned, say something that might be contradicting what the school is saying, having some clear structures and like things in place can be really helpful for that. I know some people find it very awkward, but I encourage folks to just embrace the awkward when I am leading meetings or classes with those kinds of things, because it's just, and then once people embrace the awkward, it kind of works out better. But yeah, I would encourage the committee to think about how are you getting voices of those who are or have been historically like marginalized, and not just those who are willing to jump in and speak up? Because there does need to often be more of an invitation and more of a like, no, we really do want to hear your voice kind of thing, for some of those groups.
Thanks, Ms. Park. Mr. Mitchell, is that an old hand, or did you have another comment that you wanted to share?
Old hand. Sorry about that.
Okay. Anyone else have any other comments about the next meeting, which is going to be related to the peer conferencing program and the restorative justice program? And Ms. Lulagan is going to lead on that. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more, how that is going to go down. Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if it's if we can devote maybe a little time. I'm sorry for not reaching out, Lenny, for this meeting, but maybe next meeting, kind of trying to maybe implement this policy tool. I know Ms. Park is saying it's, and I totally see the point. It's not for creating new policies, but just for the student handbook update. I wonder if we could maybe think about that a little bit, because we mentioned in December. I don't want to just you know, let it float away. So yeah, I just wanted to ask.
Would it be interesting for a few of us, like a subcommittee, to take this policy review tool? And I don't know if you all have done that in the past, like gotten together beyond this meeting to work on anything.
I mean, the OMA laws are just kind of make that a little difficult, because the committee is already so small. It's like more than two of us meeting. It's I don't know. I guess it would, yeah, it would just, that's why I think it's been a little stalled. It's just because it's been happening only in the meeting spaces.
Maybe, I mean, it would be interesting for all of us then individually, and also you can reach out to any of us on the permanent committee to let us know what you think, like taking the policy review tool that Ms. Park presented today and applying it to the handbook that let's see, this one, Updating Jones Student Handbook. A sample, so there's a sample policy from the Taft High School Student Handbook. What do you think about that? Go ahead, William.
I think that would be great. I would also love to see some people outside of the community being involved, especially more of our students who identify as trans or gender nonconforming. I think if we could somehow advertise that we were like, hey, you know, we're looking for student opinions on this, I think that would be really beneficial. I'm not sure how exactly we would do that, but I do think it would really benefit from some student perspective just beyond 3 student representatives.
I have a suggestion, but I don't know what the rules are about this, but I feel like more marketing, I guess promotion of our ideas needs to be out there. And I'm thinking Jones has an Instagram. So I don't know if you all youngers are on Instagram, but what if there was just like, what if we put these slides up on Instagram and say, you know, this is what we talked about at the meeting. And what do you think about this? Is that a place, that public space? Would that be an interesting place to pose these questions? Go ahead, William.
Yeah, for sure. And we might also, beyond just putting them up there, we might sort of say like, hey, we're carving out a chunk of time at our next meeting to discuss this. If you have thoughts, like, here's a list of questions you can think about this policy with, and then come and share your ideas with us. And that also can extend beyond Instagram. Like, I believe technically I'm allowed to put up posters at school if I'm a student, as long as they're approved by the administration. I think this is like a fairly uncontroversial thing to get approved. Like, please come talk to us. So I think definitely there's other ways beyond Instagram, but I think that would be great. Let people consider it online and then also invite them into the space at our next meeting if there's time. I'm not in charge of the agenda, obviously. But yeah, if there's time, I think it'd be great to have some student perspective that we can engage with. Yeah.
Thanks, William. Rachel?
Yes, that's a great idea. And I should say, I'm happy to tear it apart. What I wrote, I wanted students to write it with the committee. I did not want to be the person writing it. That felt bad, but I also wanted there to be something kind of put out there, throw something at the wall, see if it, no, that's not how I was thinking about it, but kind of just like, trying to get something on the page. I also just wanted to note what you see on the slide right now is not what I wrote. That's just a sample. It says right there, but I just want to make it clear if you're listening or something. That's a sample policy from Taft. It's one of the few high schools in CPS that has its own like school specific policy that has like a room number for, that has details for students, things like this. Thank you. Yeah. So thank you, Will. I think you've just linked the paragraph that I wrote. So just want to make that clear.
Thank you. Well, okay, so then we'll figure out how we can post something engaging on the Instagram, and then also William will continue to talk about like what does that poster look like, that engagement poster? Does it have a QR code on it or something that people can like direct them to maybe the Instagram post, or maybe it's a, I don't know, Google document, or, the other idea, I know it's 7:25 and I'm really excited about working on this together. The other idea that I had was a Google Alerts. It's an email that could come from this committee. For instance, we could, after this meeting is recorded and downloaded and uploaded to YouTube, on the Jones LSC, we could put this link into a follow-up email so that people could, listen if they couldn't make it today. But also we could put in there like the post for the Instagram, or we could put the QR code for whatever thing that you want to, promote. And also we could tell them to save the date for the next meeting, for the restorative justice meeting, which I'm really interested in. What do you all think about that? I think that that's a kosher thing to do. What I mean is, I think that that's okay because it's a one-way announcement board, and it's not like we're not meeting. It's just you would submit to, for instance, me or Ms. Lilaga, who's my co-chair on the Health and Safety Committee, and we could figure out what that follow-up emails could look like, because I think a lot of time passes and a lot of things happen between now and the next meetings. It's like another lifetime really in a student's life. 4 weeks is a long time. So okay, so then we'll work on that together. And what I'm going to also do, folks, is I'm going to share this slide deck with you right now into the chat so that you can also see my notes in there, and also see anything else that I might have forgotten. You can let me know. And also Ms. Lalagan is going to help with the minutes. So the links in the bottom part, we can add in there if we like. But the last tile is here and basically has all of our emails on it. I want to say that this committee was able to take votes today because we reached quorum, and I really super appreciate that. And I hope that we can continue doing things like that moving forward. But also I wanted to invite anyone who's here today to join the permanent Health and Safety Committee, because we are definitely seeking more input from students, staff, teachers, and administrators. We really do appreciate your presence here on this call, and parents, because it's all of us working together that's going to make a difference and make Jones the great school that it is, and to continue to create policies that are through a race equity lens and trauma-informed lens. And I think that we need each other to do that. So with that, I will open it up to any other questions with any other comments or thoughts about today's meeting, suggestions, critiques. It's okay. You can also just you can also just say goodbye if you're ready to go too, because that's okay as well. I want to thank Ms. Park for joining today. I really appreciate your presentation. I would like to get my hands on that book, which is called Equity Centered Trauma Informed Education by Alex Sherman Bennett, 2021, which has the policy review tool. And I look forward to working together with some of you who had some ideas about how we can generate more energy around the ideas that we put forward here today and to make them a reality. But with that, it is 7:27. And I want to shake all of your hands and give you a high five because we ended this guy on time. This is the end of our meeting. Woo-hoo. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you, Lenny. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks everyone.